A planet covered in water, an ecosystem teeming with alien life, plants, fish-like creatures, large predators, and terrifying leviathans. This is the marine world presented in the interactive documentary Subnautica. It's a strange, beautiful world with numerous unique biomes, each one begging to be explored. But be warned, it is not a friendly world, and its dark waters harbor dangers straight from our nightmares. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Dr. Felix Nebula, and to you, dear traveler, I say, welcome aboard the dimension-hopping bioship Manta. Today, we'll be diving into these waters head first, and studying as many of this planet's creatures in as much biological detail as possible. As we embark, I ask you to prepare yourself. We'll need to travel quickly to get to the Andromeda Galaxy with enough time to spare.
We've arrived. Initiating descent.
Thank you, Manta. As we approach our dear traveler, allow me to provide some contextual information. Nestled in the Ariadne arm of the Andromeda Galaxy, planet 4546b is an anomaly, one with a breathable atmosphere that circles its star within the Goldilocks zone and is covered almost entirely with water. And within these waters, there is an unusually diverse number of alien flora and fauna, the likes of which one may never see elsewhere.
Scans indicate that most of this planet is designated an ecological dead zone and is patrolled by certain creatures we may actually not want to encounter.
Ah, so it is, Manta, but keep searching. For this excursion, we're looking for a place called the Crater.
Understood. Is this the location of the notable Altera crash some time ago?
Indeed it is. From my understanding of that tragic event, at least one stranded individual managed to escape, though there was an event sometime after in Sector 0, but that is an ecosystem for another time.
The crater has been located. Landing now.
Excellent. It appears that the wreckage of the Aurora is still visible even from here. Manta, please be sure to place us in the safe shallows. I don't want to concern our guest, but elsewhere this planet is somewhat inhospitable to visitors. Now the crater, as it is known, is a geo, a type of undersea volcanic formation that once protruded above the surface and has since been subjected to erosive forces, resulting in a flattened summit beneath the marine surface. Everything beyond the edge of this volcanic structure is what is referred to as the dead zone, which Manta mentioned previously. We'll return to that later.
Scans indicate that multiple distinct ecological biomes exist within this crater.
That's right, and each one provides a very unique habitat for their respective endemic fauna and flora. We'll begin in what is known as the Safe Shallows, a biome populated by sprawling reefs, clear water, and even a few cave systems. With no predators endemic to the area, this should be a good point from which to launch our tour. And look, the perfect specimen to do so. Manta, why don't you use your patented OmniGrab array to bring one on board? This is the bladderfish. What a fascinating creature. Of course, the most notable aspect of these creatures' anatomy has to be their dual bladders, one ventral and one dorsal.
Hence the name, I presume.
Yes, that's right. Anyway, for the bladderfish, these structures are crucial not only to form, but to function, serving as tools of extracting oxygen, energy, and even producing movement. By contracting and expanding these sacs, the bladderfish is able to control its buoyancy. For forward locomotion, this creature has no fins and yet is surprisingly maneuverable. This appears to be because it possesses a total of 6 open-ended vascular tubes that can contract rapidly, pushing water out and generating forward propulsion. This method of locomotion is very efficient, and that's good because energy efficiency is crucial for this creature.
Is that because it doesn't appear to have any kind of oral cavity?
Precisely. And as a matter of fact, it has no gills either. Instead, it appears that the bladderfish filters both seawater and air through its bladder's semi-permeable membrane. Organic particulates are also captured and consumed as water passes through this membrane. Once inside the bladders, some air is retained for buoyancy control, while the rest, along with the particulates from the water, is directly absorbed by the body cavity. We also see faint bioluminescence both in the violet-colored bladders and the propulsion tubes that extend out of it. In fact, bioluminescence is a hallmark of the creatures on this planet, and I think we'll be seeing much more of it. But here, there is perhaps no more iconic organism than the one I just happened to see swimming nearby, the peeper. As you can see, the peeper resembles in some ways the traditional Piscine body plan observed on our Earth, but with some major deviations. First and most obvious are its abnormally large eyes, glowing with yellow bioluminescence.
Scans indicate highly developed ocular anatomy and advanced chromatic adaptation mechanisms.
Fascinating. The peeper's retina appears quite complex. Note the wide array of photoreceptor cells, each tuned to different wavelengths. This creature can undoubtedly see quite well in bright light, low light, and even a full spectrum of colors. The eye's bright luminescence is also striking, and in theory could pose a problem by attracting predators, especially at night, when they stand out quite intensely in the dark. But the peeper also possesses a unique anatomical feature: movable eyelids. When closed, they effectively prevent any light from reflecting off the lenses of the eyes, a critical function in nocturnal defense. During the day, this unusually intelligent creature can be observed in many biomes, and especially in the shallower areas where it can use its tough beak to break down coarse vegetation and coral. And notice how quickly it swims. A powerful caudal fin allows it to generate impressive speeds, even enabling it to leap from the water's surface to escape predators.
What do you suppose is the purpose of the extensions above and below its eyes? Are they fins also?
An excellent question. Interestingly, these are one of several adaptations that appear a bit incongruent with its habitat. First, the peeper's nasal cavity appears unusually large and presumably quite sensitive, but the high concentration of what appear to be receptors designed to bind only to one unidentified enzyme is even more unusual. Second, the extensions you asked about do appear to be fins, or at least used to be. In modern peepers, each of these has been adapted to contain a tube that extends to the stomach and gills. Through these tubes, the peeper is able to expel its stomach contents on demand.
What could possibly be the purpose of these abilities?
A question scientists on this planet have pondered deeply. Analysis indicates that these adaptations are relatively recent, and that this species played a vital part in equalizing an external bacterial threat. That, my dear traveler, is a story for another time. For now, we'll be descending further down the crater to a darker and more mysterious biome. This is the bulb zone, a region characterized by the bulb bush, a unique species of flora with bioluminescent spheres studding its surface. There are also plentiful crevices and large mounds of sand behind which any number of things could be hiding. Speaking of which, here comes one now. We need to be careful with this one, Manta. As the name implies, the mesmer is best known for its incredible ability to psychologically manipulate prey using hypnotic visual projections, and that's something we may want to avoid.
Perhaps just scanning this one will suffice.
That's a good idea. The mesmer is, even at first glance, a beautiful organism, with vibrant bioluminescent hues of purple and blue and green, and with 4 large skin panels that trail behind it as it swims. You may also notice its tubular eyes, very reminiscent of the telescope fish on our own Earth, an appropriate adaptation to the lower light conditions of its preferred habitats.
Internal scans indicate a series of bioluminescent photophore organs lining the skin panels.
Fascinating. This appears to be exactly what allows the mesmer to produce its hypnotic effect. As you said, these numerous photophores exhibit muscular control and can be angled independently, functioning analogously to cephalopod chromatophores, such as those found in the cuttlefish. Overlying the photophore core are intricate muscles and lenses which provide the mesmer fine motor control over each photophore's brightness and direction, and rapid coordination between the photophores, creating a pulsating display which works to entrance both prey and potential predators.
How does this work in the affected organism exactly?
Well, it appears that in the mesmer's victim, these rhythmic bioluminescent signals overstimulate optic nerves and visual processing centers, overwhelming normal brain-eye connections and allowing the pulses of light to essentially hijack lower brain function. In the brain, this phenomenon is known as neural oscillation entrainment, wherein brainwaves naturally synchronize to the rhythm of periodic external stimuli, such as speech, music, or light. This can lead to a whole host of complications in the victim's brain, including overstimulation of the optic tectum, a region of the brain primarily associated with instinctual sensory motor functions, and acoustic processing regions such as the inferior colliculus. All of this leads to pronounced hallucinations, both visual and auditory, with the ultimate effect being an inexplicable desire to move closer to the mesmer, disregarding all common sense, with some human victims reporting audible, reassuring voices. And when its prey does move closer, fixated on its hypnotic light show, the mesmer can strike. As you can see, the external portion of the mesmer's body is actually a protective outer shell, the anterior region of which can open like jaws, allowing 4 spiked barbs to extend outwards, grasping prey and pulling them inward to a central toothless mouth, much like that of a starfish. It may not seem like much at first glance, but that's just the thing. If you're not careful, your first glance may just be your last. And on that note, let's look for a predator that, while still threatening, is a bit more quantifiable. Ah, there's one now. Behold the bone shark, a creature with an intimidating appearance and an even more intimidating temperament. The most distinctive feature of this highly aggressive species is its heavily mineralized exoskeleton, itself composed of hardened bony plates arranged in overlapping segmented rows.
Interesting. It appears that this mineralization extends internally. Scans indicate enlarged vertebrae and sharp oral protrusions.
That is interesting, especially the latter point. Rather than teeth embedded in gum tissue, the bone shark's teeth are actually extensions of its exoskeleton. While certainly biologically efficient, this does make me wonder if these teeth can regrow or be replaced, an enormous advantage provided by the polyphyodont dentition observed in sharks on Earth. In any case, in this species we observe coloration patterns of muted gray with orange highlights, which suggests camouflage resulting from a habitat among silicate rock and thermal vent environments. Reflective green eyes with vertical pupils indicate adaptations for its low-light conditions. The lack of a dorsal fin is unusual, but large pectoral fins appear to compensate for this. These fins exhibit stiffened leading edges with hooked barbs potentially used for territorial displays, grappling prey, or interspecies aggression. And indeed, this species does exhibit highly aggressive territoriality. Bone sharks tend to congregate in small family groups to drive off competitors and maintain prime hunting grounds, moving slowly to conserve energy. But when their territory is violated, they attack with relentless, blinding speed. Whether prey or intruder, these hardened teeth are capable of crushing through just about anything. There's really nothing like the feeling of wandering through the dark water, only to be greeted by this creature's hardened, gaping maw. Though even that may not be as bad as being electrocuted to death.
You may need to rephrase that.
Oh, of course. Don't worry, dear traveler, we are perfectly safe here. It's been weeks since we've submitted a single incident report. Manta, why don't you bring aboard our next organism?
Apologies, I had some issues grabbing this one due to electrical interference.
Amazing! Here we see the amp eel, a very large serpentine creature with a body divided into 8 segments, not including the head and tail. It appears to exhibit counter-shading, with dull green dorsal coloration and a light tan underbelly.
Yes, that's interesting, but what about the electricity?
Okay, fair point. You may have noticed, our dear traveler, that surrounding the amp eel's body are numerous visible arcs of electrical current, jumping between regularly spaced electrical prongs, for lack of a better word. Electrogenesis appears to be accomplished by a unique bioelectric organ that runs the length of the amp eel's body, and that appears to be derived from modified muscle tissue. The prongs themselves appear to be simply passive conductors, acting as projection points for the electrical field generated by the central organ's cell depolarization patterns. By alternating activation between dorsal and ventral prongs, the amp eel can even dynamically control current directionality, an adaptation extremely useful for stunning and even killing prey and predators alike.
Scans indicate discharge voltages of 700 to 1000 volts.
Amazing! Fortunately, the intensity of this voltage tapers off rapidly with distance from the prong array, so if we keep our distance, we should be alright. In the wild, amp eels are active, opportunistic predators that patrol large reef territories, and despite their size and power, they appear curious and cautious around divers, which to me indicates a relatively high level of intelligence. But alas, our time in the bulb zone has come to an end. We have many biomes to explore, and next we're heading to a region so notoriously dangerous that many visitors to this planet avoid it altogether. But not us. Manta, bring us to... If you look out the portholes, dear traveler, you'll see, well, not much. The dunes, as this biome is known, is a vast, sandy plain, broken only by a few structures of rock. No matter the time of day, this desolate seascape is dark and murky, and threats aren't always easy to see ahead of time.
Is there something we should be concerned about?
Not necessarily, Manta. Just let me know if your scans pick up anything unusually large. But for now, look there. Just the creature I hope to see. Drifting lazily through the water, propelled by two unusually large pelvic fins, is a creature that may at first remind you of a manatee wearing a gas mask. But of course, it is much more than that. The gasopod is an herbivore, and a large one at that, and given its slow-moving nature, it would be an attractive meal for many predators. Fortunately for it, it possesses some unusual forms of defense.
Scans indicate a high concentration of an unknown form of algae housed in its posterior appendage.
Precisely. In fact, this is its primary defense mechanism. Where one might expect its tail to be, instead we see a bulbous gland containing symbiotic microalgae capable of producing highly poisonous and corrosive compounds. When threatened, the gasopod can contract muscles around the gland, causing the release of noxious fluids into the surrounding water. And the danger of this algal compound is worse than it may seem. Even brief exposure can dissolve exoskeletons and damage delicate respiratory structures. The toxic aspect of the gasopod's emissions primarily revolves around neurotoxicity. These compounds are similar to the tetrodotoxin found in Earth's pufferfish, and they directly target the nervous system. By binding to sodium channels in nerve cell membranes, they effectively block nerve impulses, resulting in paralysis, and in high enough concentrations, can be fatal. But even if your respiratory organs are well protected, this toxin still poses a danger. This is because it also exhibits an unusually high concentration of hydroxide ions, making it highly alkaline. When released into the water, these hydroxide ions interact aggressively with complex molecules like proteins and nucleic acids, breaking them down through a process known as saponification, which literally dissolves molecular structures.
But how is the gasopod not damaged by its own corrosive cloud?
Excellent point. But you see, the gasopod appears to possess multiple protective adaptations that allow it to be unaffected by the chemicals, including thick, non-reactive skin layers and specialized multi-layered gills that filter out virtually any environmental toxins. The question of how the gasopod came into this kind of symbiotic relationship with this algae isn't clear, but it seems likely that an ancestor of the modern species ingested free-floating algal cells, which somehow managed to survive the digestive system and colonize precursor gland tissue. Eventually, this led to permanent algal habitation. From there, and this is pure speculation, gene exchange may have provided the algae with the necessary biochemical pathways to produce its noxious compounds. But as much as I would love to study each creature in devastating detail, we do have a schedule to keep. Fortunately, our next species is right over there. Manta, if you would. This is the hoopfish, a small schooling organism with one particularly extraordinary adaptation, one that defies the traditional understanding of aquatic locomotion. Look closely and you'll notice that the hoopfish's bright green antennae, which extend from the top and bottom of its head, form a kind of bioluminescent hoop encircling its tail.
What is the purpose of these antennas? Are they ornamental?
I'm glad you asked. In fact, these antennae act as bioelectrodes, generating a controlled electrical current that triggers the electrolysis of water molecules directly in front of the hoopfish. In turn, it appears that this splits these molecules into its constituent hydrogen and oxygen gases. This creates an area of significantly reduced water density and a path of least resistance through which the organism can glide easily through.
So it's not swimming in the traditional sense.
Exactly. This is an extremely efficient form of locomotion, but the energy required for such electrolysis necessitates a highly specialized metabolic system, one capable of generating and managing substantial energy reserves. Otherwise, the hoopfish is a social creature and tends to respond to threats in a...
Detecting multiple Leviathan-class life forms in the region. Are you certain whatever you're doing is worth it?
Huh? What was that, Manta?
Sorry, I'm not sure what came over me there. Seriously though, we better be careful. There's something out there.
Uh-oh. Don't worry, dear traveler. This was expected and actually quite fortuitous. For the hulk that swims before us is perhaps the most notable organism to swim this planet's waters, if only for how well known it has come to be. I am speaking, of course, of the Reaper. Our first Leviathan-class creature. Manta, please proceed with the scan discreetly. Okay, we should be in the clear. As you can see, the Reaper is a colossal beast, with adults routinely reaching lengths of 55 meters. Its body is serpentine, muscular, and sleek, truly optimized for rapid bursts of speed. We also see dual dorsal fins, 4 caudal extensions, and a pair of very large, nearly rigid pectoral appendages. Interestingly, its bright coloration, made up of blues and reds with slight bioluminescence, is quite reminiscent of Earth's oarfish. But the most distinct aspect of this creature's morphology is undoubtedly its immense, powerful mandibles, which protrude laterally from the maxilla. These 4 grasping appendages each terminate in black, hooked claws capable of crushing even through tough metal alloys. The large gaping maw houses rows of dagger-like teeth, and needless to say, many an explorer to this planet have met their end in the Reaper's powerful jaws. Manta, what else can our scans tell us?
Scans indicate clusters of afferent and efferent nerves in the Reaper's brain case, which itself appears enlarged.
Fascinating. Now, rather than high intelligence, which this creature does not appear to exhibit, this enlarged brain case likely indicates a surprising level of agility and spatial awareness, despite a relatively small overall brain volume. As it appears, most of its brain power is concentrated in sensory processing. And in fact, the Reaper is a wonder of predatory adaptations. Besides the streamlined and powerful body and immense jaws, we see a lateral line like those of fish on Earth, and which allows the Reaper to detect even minute disturbances in the water. But that's not all. Its characteristic roar, the dread of any who drift into this Titan's domain, is a form of echolocation. By emitting sound waves below 40 Hz, the Reaper is able to effectively map its surroundings even in darkness, and it appears that its laryngeal air sac acts as a kind of low-frequency transducer, sensitive enough to track even small fish by minute changes in acoustic impedance.
Shudder.
Yes, shudder indeed. And if the Reacher does manage to lock onto you, there's little hope of escape. Those claw-tipped mandibles are truly formidable prehensile weapons. These scans show high-torque musculature, which allows the Reaper to grasp even large, struggling prey, moving them right into its crushing jaws.
Puncture wounds found in the hulls of numerous wrecked vessels indicate a theoretical max pincer force of between 3,000 and 5,000 psi.
Let's try to avoid that, shall we, Manta? In short, the Reaper Leviathan is a true macro-predator. While not as intelligent as more neotenic marine vertebrates, it compensates with raw, honed killing power. But there is always a bigger fish. Manta, chart a course for the next phase of our journey. We have a few moments, dear traveler. Take this time to recuperate, because from here, the biological wonders held within Planet 4546b only get more mysterious, bizarre, and dangerous.